Where or what group represents the city of Santa Fe, and what group represents Santa Fe County?
There,
The two,
You
I
have
can
the
answer.
we have the economic,
Yeah, there's two of them. The first one, the Santa Fe SF Economic Department is city, and then further down, you'll see Santa Fe County Economic Development Department.
And the chamber.
And they have,
Right.
they're connected with commissioners and the mayor and the other, the councilors and all that.
Yes.
There's a connection there.
yes.
Yeah, so that it doesn't get lost somehow.
Yes, Chair Siegel
Good.
and Board Member Abeta. And also there's the Santa Fe Arts Commission, there's, and I thought there was at least one other, but again, this list is just the original draft that was the thinking, and it was a differently configured board at that particular time. So, I think that whatever the board's pleasure is at this point, we just can't have more than 30 at this point. That's the only limitation that we have, but it's entirely up to you.
Go ahead, Chris.
What does Native American groups, what does that mean? Does that mean pueblos? Does that mean res? Does that mean,
Chair Siegel and Board Member Abeta, I think that is for the board, the Learning Center District Board, to determine which organizations. We were pretty specific in making the recommendations in terms of business, economic development, and the public school, the education sector. But I believe, it really is totally up to the discretion of this board as to which organizations they think would best represent those groups.
Kathy.
Madam Chair, I would make the recommendation that we first approach 8 Northern Indian Pueblos Council, which is a representative of all the tribes serve on that council. They meet on a monthly basis, so they're probably the first place to go to get a broad representation. It's where all of the tribes in our region, at least, are working together.
Other comments, questions?
I'm sorry, I have
Go
one.
ahead.
All right. I've worked throughout the years with nonprofit groups that work with like GED students and students that are right on the edge, and that might want to go to a 2-year college, if not, finish a bachelor's degree. What organization do you guys know of, or does anyone know of that would represent those nonprofit groups, like Youth Works, or like the SER program, or other programs that are working with those students that are right there, and that this program might be beneficial to them because they don't have to spend the money to move out of town. They won't have to spend the money to get that bachelor's degree like many students have to. And so I don't know which would be that all-encompassing one group. If there's I don't know if you know of any. There used to be the Youth Works nonprofit whatever group, or if there's something like that, I think it would be really good to get a representative, so that we do have the whole picture of the upper level secondary schools that they're there, but also those programs that are working in the trenches, and with the street kids, and giving that opportunity, because that's what I feel a community college is about, and get those folks in there so that we can even get them into the higher education portion. So I don't know what exists anymore. I'm not in touch anymore. But if anybody is, if we can find that out, I think it would be really good. I think it'd be great. So anyway.
Chair Siegel and Board Member Abeta, I think that's a great idea, and if we can, identify an organization that would, kind of collectively represent that group.
So a nonprofit
Yep.
organization,
Yeah.
association, or something.
Is there a GED association, do you know?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, the only group that I'm aware of, and perhaps Board Member Abeta may know better than, well, he probably does know better than I, but like the literacy volunteers and their board, I mean, that's the
there's-
only organization that has,
Well, they have the
Pretty
state ABE organization, and, for example, Letty's on the board of directors, I know that, and as I was, so that might be something, but it might be too removed or something. I don't know how there used to be a regional structure, and they might have a representative that would be a representative within that structure in order to get that kind of stuff happening with the state convention, so that they know what's going on with the HEC and different things. I don't know. I'm not aware, but I'll start looking. I'll start looking. This is something that has a deadline of.
Chair Siegel and Board Member Abeta, the request is to have the board, make the appointments to the advisory committee by May of this month, just to be in sync with the timing for the planning on the opening of the new building.
May of this year?
Yes.
So you'll have two months to, or a little less, to put this together,
Good,
to
that's
bring
not bad.
recommendations.
Correct. And then the thinking is to, work over the summer. I'm already working with Margaret Peters, our Vice President for Academic Affairs, and her deans and everything, and also the partner institutions in developing the schedule and identifying the program expansion that we're going to be doing. So it would be really good to bring this advisory committee into the mix over the summer and into the early fall of next year as we finalize our plans.
Okay, so we need a May HEC meeting to do this. Go ahead, Martha, and then Randy.
These are all representatives of organizations. Is there any need, in your view, to have a representatives, 1, 2, 3, whatever, from the community at large? I don't know how we'd identify them, but I'm thinking that they should be people who know something about the kinds of programs that we need, the kinds of students that are out there, somebody who represents the community at large, partly because they become terrific ambassadors for the HEC.
What if we add, like, community nonprofits and community members at large?
Yeah,
Two or three. I mean, we're losing the Santa Fe Business Alliance. Is there a reason to have PED and HED on the committee? I mean, just because.
Madam Chair, I am so glad you asked that question, and I was just going to make reference to that. In the original recommendations, the Higher Education Department and the Public Education Department were not included, mostly because this is a community advisory committee where we're trying to get input on what the educational needs are, what employer training needs there are. And the HED and PED were added by previous board members as part of the discussion, but it was at it was a long time ago. I mean, this was in 2009. It was several years ago, and we're a lot farther along. And my recommendation is that that all the appointees be, really broadly representative of the community. And I would rather, remove the agency folks to get more community members and the nonprofit kinds of organizations. And the only other point I'd like to make is that we all know what it's like to have large advisory committees or boards or anything like that. So I think that really keeping in the 20 to 25 range is probably, it will be more productive. And maybe we want to be bigger to start off with, and then to get broader input, and then decrease the number of members over time.
And not everyone will be able to come to every meeting.
That's correct.
I want to ask you one other question, but Randy, did you want to?
I just wanted to say, if we can get a group appointed by May, we can still add other people
Yes.
at a later date. So we don't have to have the entire committee
Right.
appointed by May.
But I agree with you that the HED and the Public Education Department bring a political
Yes.
perspective that perhaps an advisory committee of this kind doesn't need. I mean, we'll have to go to them anyway, but we'll go to them in a different.
We can report to them about how great
Right.
we're doing, but
Right,
I don't think they'll come anyway.
yeah.
But what is the Contractors Association?
Oh, that's the Santa Fe Area Contractors Association. They've been, well, just to provide input on the construction industry, and they have been great supporters of the community college. They're very connected to our programs through the TATC, and Chair Siegel, perhaps President Grissom would, he's really not.
I think what we're really talking about more is the Santa Fe Area Home Builders Association. But we can always throw in some of the larger contractors who could help us out too. So.
Okay. So can you talk a little bit about how you would see this meeting structure working, and what specific questions are you going to be asking them?
Well, the mission or the purpose of this advisory committee is exactly what's stated. I quoted from the Learning Center Act. That's all it says.
I'm talking.
Right. So, right. Yes. I have, and so I think that besides making the appointment to the board, and between now and the first meeting of the advisory committee, that there needs to be a further conversation, among the board members about what focus they want to take. And as we are making the appointments, as we're creating the advisory committee, I'm working with IASH, on doing another community advisory committee to be more targeted, to also inform us as we're making final decisions on the academic plan for the HEC building. So I see this all coming together, and I see that the advisory committee, their primary focus to begin with is going to be reviewing the community needs assessment information that we have, getting an overview of what is currently being offered by our four-year partner institutions. We have an HEC academic plan work group that is intensively meeting and cranking out that academic plan for the HEC, and that this advisory committee would also review what's coming out of that work group. And that work group, again, has the lead academic administrators from each of our four-year partner institutions. So I see this as really being a work group to start out with, and that that it would be very important. I think that once the board decides which organizations they would like to have represented, and then how they would like to have community members, individual community members and nonprofit reps selected, then I think that there needs to be outreach, and I would suggest, perhaps, make that I, as the HEC director, would make the initial contact and explain, what the advisory committee is and what the commitment would be, beyond, serving for a year and attending meetings. But this is going to be the scope of work for this group, and whether they're interested, and then to follow that up by a formal letter that comes from the Learning Center District Board, signed by both the chair of the Learning Center District Board and the president of the community college. And then we schedule our first meeting.
So in May, you would be bringing us actual names of people that you have already talked to who are interested?
I would, yes, Chair Siegel, I would like to do that. What I would like from you all this evening is the direction, and then I think that, we're going to be meeting on a monthly basis, is my understanding, so there will be an April Learning Center District Board meeting too. So what I would like to do is to, get, based on your input, and if you have additional thoughts later on, you can email me or pass the information on to President Grissom so he can get it to me. But then I fine tune the list, and I develop a process for what's going to happen now, so that I would have, that the director of the Higher Education Center would contact the executive officer of each of these organizations, and then implement whatever the selection process is for community members and nonprofits, however you want to do that. But I think that we need to make some decisions about that in April, so that when we come back in May, it is another action item, and the Learning Center District Board is formally appointing those individuals.
So can you have recommendations of organizations and perhaps people by April?
Of course, Chair Siegel and Board Member Romero, sure.
I think it would be helpful to have at least a tentative list of folks that you're looking, or at least of the organizations that you've talked with and their commitment, their sense of commitment. And they may have positions rather than people, individual names, but that would be useful, I think, to have before we have to make a decision about the composition finally.
Okay, Randy and then Chris.
Madam Chair, I'd like to just respond to that a little bit. I think that's a great idea. What I would request, too, is that if you have names of people that you think, you would send that to both Tina and myself, and we'll follow up with those people so that we can include them potentially on that draft list that we would bring back in April. But I think we can come up with a draft list then, and then hopefully have a list that you'll approve at the May meeting.
Chris?
Well, once again, it's a whole thing of having the committee represent, having them represent the community, so that the communities, we have a diverse community, and as we do here in the college and as we do in Santa Fe, and it's like, I would like to see that so that there's a balance, and so everybody feels comfortable, so that it's not a type of thing that's, that it's business top heavy, or that it's whatever top heavy, whatever that might be. The thing is that it reflects the community like our college should. That it reflects our community, and that's really good. I see them here. What you want to do is that we tell Randy here, Randy, I'd like to see that we get this group in there, or whatever group in there, and then you'll research it, see if they're even able to. I have a couple of suggestions that I think might be good of, different organizations that I think would be cool. That would be good.
Chair Siegel and Board Member Abeyta, I would like to just, ditto what President Grissom just said, is please, within a week, it would be really nice if you could get us the list of additional organizations that are not currently on this list, and also individuals from organizations that are on the list that you think would be good to serve, and even community members. Give us as much contact information through your networks as you possibly can.
Okay, this is an action. Did you, Kathy?
Can I just, one more quick suggestion of those at-large community members that we add? I would love to see one added for a young person, so that we have someone, I don't know, under 21 maybe, that we appoint. It would be great to have their input as a part of this process too.
So we took some off and we added some, but this is an action item for approving this list.
No.
Says it's an action.
No.
It is an action.
The action item is really to give staff direction in terms of how to assist the board in making the appointments to the advisory committee. And it was worded the way it was for the agenda just because that was the only way I could think to state it. But the important thing is, too, that you approve the, you're being asked to approve the composition of the HEC Community Advisory Committee, and to me, that's not individual memberships. That's the conversation that we just had about philosophically what kind of representation do we want, and that the members be appointed by May 30th of 2014. That's specifically in
Okay.
what's being asked.
So I think you have direction on membership, removing a couple of them or several of them and adding the nonprofits and community members. And so the motion then is,
To direct staff to.
So I would move that we direct staff to follow up on the conversation, the corpus of the conversation that we have had, and then bring us some further information
for appointment.
For appointment by
by
May
30th.
Okay,
of 2014.
all right, that's the motion. Is there a
Second.
second? Okay, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
And now we have our construction project report.
Thank you all. Chairman Abeta, members of the board.
Oh, she's the
Actually,
chairman.
Chairman Siegel, this,
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm already in a different board. I'm sorry. Chairman Siegel, members of the board, President Grissom, and new member Pablo Cedillo. Thank you for allowing us to present before you this afternoon. We're going to give you a brief status and progress report on the HEC project and provide you some comments as well. And then we're also going to give you a update with regards to the gross receipts tax and associated with the maximum price. Jump into the project status and update. Santa Fe Community College received the temporary grant of easement for ingress and egress from the city, item 131159. After legal review, the document was signed by both parties. The term is for either of the 2 years of the date of execution or the date Santa Fe Community College received certification of occupancy. We're going to continue to work with the city for a permanent land lot adjustment. When we met with the city in December, we had agreed to a temporary grant for egress access, and they had promised us they would work for a permanent land lot adjustment, and that requires a city council approval. And we have a new mayor and some new city council members, so we're going to go back and make sure that that promise comes to fruition. We have confirmed with the city and other parties that the traffic study was adequate in our addressing the traffic concerns. Chairman Member Siegel and President Grissom had met with President Hines from Santa Fe University of Art and Design on this issue. The recommendations from the report are already underway. In fact, the city had proposed last year to the legislators to upgrade the lighting on Zia Road, and that was line item vetoed last year, and I presume that they're still pursuing that for upgrades to that lighting at that intersection. The study also recognized that the traffic impact was not coming from the HEC, but in fact coming from north traffic off of Yucca onto Siringo. So that was not really a traffic concern for HEC, and HEC is not adding any additional traffic concerns. So for all intents and purposes, that issue has been put to rest. There's a second issue that Santa Fe University Art and Design brought up, and that is that they asked if we would put an emergency exit only on that north entrance. And we've looked at that and studied that quite some time. We've had input from our design and construction team. And quite frankly, their recommendation is that we do not make that an exit, emergency exit only. And there's a number of reasons for that. If we make that north entrance an emergency exit only, that doesn't stop folks from going out the west entrance and turning right and going right back out that entrance. So it really doesn't satisfy that emergency requirement. The other issue is that it really hamstrings our traffic within the actual HEC site, forcing people to, as opposed to enter and exit through a pronounced way, it forces them to actually enter, circle, and come back out. And that does cause confusion and will hamstring us. So the recommendation from our design team is that we do not make that an emergency exit only. We did provide Santa Fe University Art and Design 2 locations where we recommend that they actually install a gate, and that would be further up on Alumni Drive and another location on the south side of Alumni Drive. And so for all intents and purposes, we are going to present that to them, and hopefully we'll satisfy that issue as well. The project experienced a few days loss due to the soils issues. Early on in the year, as you all recall, we have bad soil on site. The soil was not sufficient for structural compaction. The structural compaction requirements were a PI, which is a plasticity index of 10 or less, and a blend ratio of 40% or greater. We were seeing plasticity indexes of 14 and greater, and we were not getting anywhere near the 40%. We were more like 60%. So for all intents and purposes, we had bad soil. We had to blend that soil, and we have proceeded to do that. The McCarthy team has made up some of that lost time during the excavation work, and those lost days have been eliminated, so we are on schedule to date. The project's final completion date has not changed from 1/15/15. The actual project should be completed in late December, but we're scheduled to be fully complete by 1/15/15. P&M's power pole relocation is complete, and the old poles have been removed. You know, incidentally, those are slides that are rotating, and that's the slides of March, pictures of the project. So as I'm going through the status, you can refer to some of those photos. The power poles have been relocated. Temporary power we're hoping to get on site by next week. We're still using a generator, so hopefully next week we'll see temporary power. The new HEC address is 1950 Siringo Road, and that is the official address from the city. We are still on track to receive LEED Gold certification, and that's quite an accomplishment. In fact, we're looking perhaps to gain some additional points if we can declare. Right now, the projection is for our photovoltaic array to provide about 70% of our power. If we can if we can pursue what's called Green Power Designation certification, and essentially what we're doing is we're certifying that we're going to be using green power for the additional 30%, and we buy those energy credits. A building of our size has been done in history in this last year, 30,000 square foot building or so, and it was about $1,000 to purchase those credits. If we purchase those credits, which essentially says that the additional 30% of power that we use will come from green power, if we purchase those credits, that'll give us an additional 3 points. We're at about 65 points credit for LEED Gold certification. We only need 60, so we're in good shape right now. And those 2 additional points would be some insurance for the future. We're still on, the team and DPS have received over 30 separate submittals, including 15 RFIs, requests for information, from McCarthy and some contractors. So we're out there answering questions as fast as we can, and so are the design team. So we're progressing right along. Positive Energy and Bradbury and Stamm are finalizing the engineering design for the photovoltaic array. Bradbury, Stamm, and McCarthy are working to coordinate this work. Essentially, there was a design requirement change for the photovoltaic array on the roof. There was some wind load limits that were being exceeded with the existing racks that were supporting our photovoltaic arrays on that roof. So in order to meet those wind shear requirements, we had to reduce the footprint of those voltaics on the roof. And so we essentially reduced that footprint on the roof. In exchange, we moved those voltaics onto the parking lot. So we'll actually threefold multiply the number of photovoltaic array on the parking lot that we took off the roof. Also, because we reduced the size of the photovoltaic footprint on the roof, we reduced it from 160 to 145 kilowatt total power. And so that's still going to amount to about 70% of power generation. So we're still on track for about 70% of the power supplied by these photovoltaic arrays. The materials on site for the geothermal wells, we hope to begin that this week. Because we changed the design of the photovoltaic array and moved some of those voltaics to the parking lot, that's where our geothermal wells are going to be, and it's causing a little bit of consternation, if you will, with the design for those geothermal wells, because we can't move those wells too easily. That's a pretty concise measurement for those wells. So we're redesigning a little bit with regards to the new design for the photovoltaics, and it's causing a little impact with our design team, but we hope to get that resolved here shortly. There's approximately 40 wells, and they're going to be about 300 foot deep. The McCarthy team continues with the earthwork efforts. We're encountering very little debris, and we've had no hazardous materials to date. The earthwork is approximately 75% complete. McCarthy is currently reporting a usage of about $162,000 of the $183K that they had projected for the soils blending issue that I discussed earlier. We're reviewing a number of value engineering items for acceptance to help offset these additional costs. And also the construction team has identified some costs that they didn't have to use over the winter, like frost-proof protection and other costs that we now can relocate to this soils blending issue. So hopefully we don't envision a financial impact at all with this. The footings for the retaining walls and structure have been poured as of 3/14 on the west side, and the footing work has progressed in stages from west to north and along the east. The excavation for the parking lot and the elevator utility work is to begin this week. As of the last import soil material is done, we're not importing any more soils. So we can say that 162 is not going to grow anymore. In fact, the soils we have on site and the excavation work that still remains, we'll have plenty of soil to blend in order to complete the excavation work. The sanitary sewer tie-in line is complete on Alumni Drive. And the structural fill and compaction in the building pad is 100% completed, and there's some more excavation work to do with the ponds and to do with the trash enclosure. But for the most part, we should be done with the excavation work probably by the middle or end of April. I've got a couple of photo slides that I'll show you and give you kind of an update specifically on the project. Yeah, that's it. This is a photo of the mock-up of the retaining walls. That's theoretically what the retaining walls will look like from the outside looking in. Next slide, please. This is a picture of the west side footings for the stem walls. As you can see, they're poured and the stem walls are raised. Contiguous with the rebar in the footings is also installed for the stem walls. So we're actually accomplishing 2 rebar jobs with 1 laying. So not only will we get the footings with that rebar, but we'll also get the stem walls. So the construction team is using a lot of their tools of the trade to get the job done much quicker. Next slide, please. Again, there's another picture of the footings starting from the west and moving north and east. There's a photo of the project team. And as you can see, there's materials landing on site daily. So we're beginning to see a lot of the materials on site. We've had no theft issues to date. The security right now is predominantly supplied by the contractor. They've had their batteries stolen from a couple of their vehicles, but other than that, things seem to be calm from the SEF side. That's about it. We're open to any questions or concerns that any of you may have.
Any questions?
And then we wanted to give you an update on the budget.
Okay.
Yeah, the update on the budget is simply,
That microphone.
Chair Siegel, members of the board, the update on the budget is really an informational item, just correcting the construction cost. When the board approved the guaranteed maximum price, which was $8,231,412, it did not include New Mexico gross receipts tax. And since that's a fairly significant amount, which we're estimating at $560,672, the true construction cost, not the overall budget for the project, but just the construction cost, really is at $8,792,000 because of that. And again, we had always factored that gross receipts tax into the overall budget, but just thought that you should be aware that construction cost is not really the GMP, but the GMP plus the New Mexico gross receipts tax.
When you go out for bid, you don't want to include taxes for them to bid against. So
Right.
you don't include the taxes and they bid against the project without taxes.
But it was always in the budget.
It was
it's in the budget, yes.
always in the budget, yes.
And we pay gross receipts rather than the construction people?
Unfortunately, that's true, yes. We did, however, commission a cost segregation study, which is conducted by a firm that specializes in dealing with such activities. And we're hoping that will save us about $110,000 of gross receipts tax.
Is that because we no longer have the pyramiding?
No, that really has nothing to do with it. The cost segregation study, they simply look at items that should be excluded from gross receipts tax, items of personality mostly, And again, we anticipate that based on the values of the project, that should save us somewhere in the neighborhood of $110,000.
Okay. And it,
Madam Chair, just to let you know, we did that on the TATC and the Health Sciences Building, kind of after the fact, so we now have experience in doing that.
anything else? Any questions? All right, thank you all very much for that thorough presentation. Thank you. On to the next items. We have no board reports, that's it. No closed session. How about a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, we're adjourned.
Now it's time for the other.
On to the next board meeting.
All right, so, we've got a quorum, and,